Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are the Youngs.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us again this week. We are in the middle of our series for singles, our single friends.
Yes, thoughts for our single friends.
Absolutely. And I hope you're having a great summer and enjoying the summer months. And certainly we hope you'll continue to subscribe and share and like our podcasts. And even give it a rating. If you're willing and able to take the time, give us a rating on your particular podcast app.
Yes.
And let folks know what you think about us in that regard. Remember, you can always reach out to Bethany and me. The keepingityoungpodcast.com is the best place to go. If you would like, we can make it as easy as possible. There's a little microphone in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Hold that down, click on that, and it'll tell you how to leave us a voice message. And we would certainly be happy to hear from you that way. We are on social media, and you can reach out to Bethany, you can reach out to me, and it is Bethle is how you spell Bethany. Mm-hmm. But we're on Instagram, we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and certainly we'd love to hear from you. So
I'm not a tweeter. David's a tweeter.
That's
not a
true.
tweeter.
Well, not too many folks reach out via Twitter. They just share things, but via Facebook and Instagram a lot.
Instagram and Facebook, and I do check them periodically. So,
and certainly you can go to our website as well, evangelistdaveyoung.com.
True.
And you can reach out to us that way. But we're running here into the month of June, and just the summer's moving along.
It's been beautiful in the state of Florida now.
So check us out as well on my website there at evangelistdaveyoung.com. Keep up with our itinerary. And in fact, if you'd like to make it easy, just sign up for our newsletter there at the evangelistdaveyoung.com site. And I send that newsletter out periodically just to give people a heads up, at least once monthly, sometimes twice monthly, of where we are and what's happening in our ministry.
Yes.
And we'd love to see many of you, meet many of you, and hear from you. Please reach out if we can help you.
Yes.
So you ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
All right.
Last week we gave some thoughts for guys to be looking for, or maybe some evaluations they can do in a friendship that they feel may be becoming more than a friendship. And so this week, we're going to give some thoughts for our girls to be looking into.
The question we're answering is, how do you find a spouse in a world like ours?
Yes.
Alistair Begg said, of all the choices we ever make, there is little question that the decision about whether to marry and then whom to marry is as crucial as any we will ever face.
Absolutely.
And so what we're trying to do here for you single friends of ours, we're just trying to give you some wisdom, and these are not necessarily original to us because a lot of the ideas we found for these came from Alistair Begg and a few other authors as well, but primarily Pastor Begg. And so last week we looked at the guys. Does she have personal faith and trust? Is her beauty deeper than the skin? Does she take initiative with the attitude of submission? Build your confidence by her behavior, display kindness that touches others, and have a sense of humor in difficulties.
Yes.
Now, girls, some of these are going to overlap a little bit, but let's jump in for our single gals. You be definitive, girls. When you're in a dating relationship with a guy, you have to have wisdom. So you ask God for wisdom. You get as much advice as you can. Here are 6 ways to evaluate, should this relationship head for marriage? Number 1.
I would say, is he committed to growing in his relationship with Christ, which assumes that he has a relationship with Christ to begin with.
Yes, it does. And that's an incredibly good way of saying it. I like that phraseology because so many times a young man will be like, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I believe in God.
Right.
Yeah, I go to church.
Right.
But what you want in a husband, in a Christian marriage, and in a godly man, he will be a growing Christian.
Yes.
Is he committed? Is he committed to growing in his relationship with Christ?
Right.
And how would you think we would evaluate that? I would say part of that is he faithful to church? Does he worship?
Yes.
But I think it's even deeper than that. So what would you add to it?
Well, I would say not just church attendance, but is he drinking it in? Does he listen? Does he sing when it's during the worship time? Does he pray during the prayer time, or is he checking his phone? Is he looking at his Apple Watch? Is he like relieved when it's all over, or is he drinking it in and then commenting later, oh, I really enjoyed this point, or man, that one song we sang during worship just really touched my heart. Is he talking to you about what the Lord's doing in his heart, or steps he is taking to get closer to the Lord? Does he have a relationship with an older man who is maybe mentoring him, or maybe an accountability partner that he has? Does he talk with you about his prayer life? Does he ask you, can I pray with you about this? Sometimes guys will really shy away from praying out loud. I know I have wives who often will say to me, oh, my husband does not like to pray with me. And, I find that very sad. David and I do pray together, and it is a calm, it's just calming to my heart when David takes my hands and he just prays with me, and we are able then to take our request to the one who can do anything about it. And so I would look for that, girls, a young man who will say, hey, I'm going to pray with you about that. Or who will actually say, well, hey, let's just stop and pray about it right now. That would be someone who is growing in his relationship with Christ. It doesn't mean that he's perfect. It doesn't mean he's going to get everything right, but he is seeking that deeper relationship. And as he does that, you will be amazed at how he grows in his leadership ability, in his ability to parent. All of those things will fall more into line as he is seeking a growing relationship with Christ.
That's really good. And is he committed to growing? Is he in God's Word? Mm-hmm. Do you have evidence? Do you have any evidence that he's learning the Bible, that he knows the Bible, that he has a biblical worldview?
Yes.
Is he committed to growing in his relationship with Christ is essential if you're going to find a godly man to be your husband.
You had just mentioned his worldview. Does he have a biblical worldview? When you're just talking about cultural things, do his thoughts and ideologies and philosophies line up with the Word of God? That's very important to know.
Here's a second question that's really, really good. Is he a man of obvious integrity?
What do you mean by that?
And well, that one is that's important because that shows you his character.
Yes.
Is he on time for work? Does he work diligently? Does he give does he show honesty in his work relationships? Is he always, trying to cook the books a little bit, as we would say in our generation? Is he, he's always trying to, just slide by a little bit. It's not that big a deal. It's just, the company won't miss this. Mm-hmm. Does he just have obvious integrity? And in any business dealing, is he upfront and open about it?
Right.
Does he evidence obvious integrity? So that's what I mean by that. That's a good question, I think.
Yes, it is. And girls, you want to know, is he a hard worker? Because, you don't want a lazy man. At the same time, is he able to stop all of that and come spend time with you and develop a relationship with you? Because if he's constantly like, oh, babe, I'm sorry, I can't be there because I got to finish, one more yard that I'm mowing today, or one more thing, or, oh boy, we've got some stuff we got to do on the weekend. Work stuff is going to come up on the weekend. Sure. And work stuff does go longer. And if he's in the ministry, ministry can be 24/7. It never really shuts down. But does he take time away from the work to actually work on a relationship with you? Right. Or is he a workaholic and quote unquote married to his work?
So basically integrity is his honesty, his work ethic,
yes,
and character, and all of those kind. How he treats others, all that's a matter of integrity.
Yes.
Here's number 3.
Is he able to lead boldly?
That's an interesting one because that's tough in our culture, because so many times in our culture, the culture we're in, hates this idea of leadership and submission in the marriage. And for you single folks, if you're influenced highly by our culture, many of you probably see that as a negative.
Right.
This is so old-fashioned, this idea that God's called a man to lead in the home and a wife to submit. Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to tell you that when God talks about those things, there's 2 areas where he addresses male and female leadership roles, and that is in the home and in the church.
Yes.
There's nothing in the Bible that says a woman cannot be a governor, a senator.
Right.
The Bible doesn't address those things. He doesn't deal with those. But in a fallen world, The two areas where he really addresses these is in the church. There are limitations in the church to our roles and responsibilities, and we're not dealing with that one, but he deals with them in the home.
Yes.
And because we are sinners and because we are living with fallen natures, it's true that we are saved equally. We're saved the same way. It's true that we're created equally by God.
Right.
There's so many areas where we are the same.
Absolutely.
We're heirs together of the grace of life. But in a marriage relationship, one of the things God says has to happen is that in the way he designed the male mind and in the way he designed the male to think and to act, he holds him responsible to take the initiative of leadership. And he also holds him responsible to partner with the wife that he marries.
Right.
And then ladies, on the other side of that, he holds you responsible to have the spirit of partnership, the spirit of submission, and to respond to him to where the two of you are working together in a fallen world, and it becomes a beautiful thing rather than a negative thing.
Absolutely.
And so what we're looking for here is, girls, you're saying, is he able to lead boldly? You're not looking for a guy that is harsh with everybody, that always gets his way, that's a dictator. That's not what we mean
You're
by that
not
at all.
looking for a micromanager. If you are in a friendship with a young man who wants to tell you how to wear your hair and how to do all the tiny little things in your life, that's not what you're looking for. That's not a bold biblical leader. That is a micromanager.
Yeah, and he would be kind of somewhat narcissistic.
Yes.
And you're not looking for that. Well, two ways to evaluate this. Is he able to lead boldly? The first one is, and this is going to sound a little strange, is he genuinely affectionate with his family, okay, and with you? And secondly, is he able to stand alone? Now, those are the two ways to evaluate that. And here's what I mean by that. A genuine leader, a young man who is able to lead boldly, is a young man who knows his place in his home. So he's respectful to his parents, and he's respectful to you because you're a young lady.
Right.
And he's gentle, and he's affectionate. He shows great deference to his family's wishes because he's their son.
Right.
But at the same time, he's been trained, and he has also developed himself into a man who is able to stand alone.
Right.
He doesn't have to go home to mommy to find out what he's going to do. He's becoming a man who can stand alone.
True.
You can evaluate his bold leadership in the fact that he's leading. He's leading himself. He can stand alone without dad always having to be there to bail him out.
Right.
He can pay his own bills because he's learning to work hard. And you balance that. You always, remember, in the Bible, leadership is always balanced with love. Even in the church, we're to speak the truth in love.
Right.
And the reason leadership is balanced with love is because when a heart of love is leading, it makes the leading palatable.
True.
And when a heart of love is leading, it makes that leadership easy to follow. And so you're evaluating this. You want to really look him over. Can he lead, and is he bold in it? You don't want to, I even hesitate to say this word, but you don't want a pansy kind of leader.
True.
To where, he can never make up his mind, and he just doesn't know, and whatever. You want a guy that can make a decision, that can help with the finances, that can take the stand and say, well, we can't spend that.
Right.
We can't do this with our kids because we can't afford it, or we're not going to watch this with our family because that's dishonoring to God.
True.
So that's what we mean by that. Is he able to lead boldly? Anything you would add to that?
That was just really good. It was a good way to evaluate all of that, because sometimes when you hear the word leadership, it can be negative on both sides. Either a girl is looking for someone who's going to micromanage her, and then she'll be frustrated. And she's like, well, he's such a good leader. He tells me what to do with, my work or my hair or whatever. And then you have girls who culturally are like, no man's going to lead me. So I feel like that was a good biblical explanation of what we should be looking for.
That's great. I would add even the illustration there. Many of you have read about Nabal in the Bible.
Yes.
And one of the things, there's no doubt he was a great leader in the sense that he had a lot of money, and he had a lot of sheep, and he had a lot of servants. His leadership ability was there, but the Bible and the King James says he was churlish, and he was hard. He was difficult to get along with, and so evaluate a man like that, because you mentioned just a few moments earlier in our podcast about how there are some guys who when they get in a relationship with a girl, they start managing her time. This is how much time you can talk to your mom. This is how much time you can spend with your friends. This is the makeup I want you to wear.
Right.
This is exactly how I want you to do your hair. And typically, when a guy there, he's not leading, he's lording.
Oh.
And he's not affectionate in that leadership. He is actually he's being disrespectful to a young lady.
Yes, he's being very selfish
and very self-focused, and so that's a damaging relationship that'll be very hard in the years to come in a marriage. You can put up with that when you're dating,
maybe.
And some girls are just like, well, okay, he's such a handsome guy, or he's just such a strong leader. But he can do a lot of damage. A lot of guys are not bold leaders. They're selfish leaders.
Yes.
And micromanagers. So evaluate that one carefully. Is he able to lead? We're talking about girls. How can you be definitive in determining, should I marry this guy?
Right.
Number 4.
Does he display love sacrificially?
I like that one.
Yes.
And I've kind of already touched on that one a little bit.
Yes.
Love is sacrifices. Our culture says love is love, which is their way of saying that love is sex. And the culture we live in confuses this idea of biblical love. But biblical love is summed up in the words of Jesus when he says, greater love has no man than this, than a man that lays down his life for his friends. And what Jesus is trying to tell us there is that real love is sacrificial. Is this young man willing to sacrifice because he loves you? Is he willing to make decisions that puts you, his marriage, and his family first? Is he a giver? Because, God so loved the world that he gave. Giving is essential.
Right.
So,
and you can apply this in several areas. Be careful of a young man who is pressuring you physically. If he's saying, well, if you love me and if we're getting married in a few months, what's it going to matter? Well, he's not loving you sacrificially and certainly not biblically. So you need to be careful about that. And then be careful about a young man who makes you meet him on all of his terms. Oh, you know what? I can't make it to come pick you up. Why don't you just meet me there? Or, oh, I know we have plans for this and we're going to go spend time with your family, but I just can't make it. But no, you're always going to come meet my family, kind of thing. Does he love you sacrificially?
That's really good. Here's 2 more. I like number 5. Is he able to laugh heartily, and I put in parentheses, at himself and his failures?
It's so good to be able to laugh at yourself. Don't take life so seriously.
A man that can't laugh heartily at himself and his failures probably is going to deal with things like issue of anger, and maybe even eventually bitterness. There are some guys that take themselves way too seriously. And they are so insecure that rather than laugh at their weaknesses or laugh at their failures or laugh at their, foibles, is that the right word?
Right.
Rather than laugh at that, they get all defensive and they get huffy and they get their feelings hurt and they pout all the time and they slam doors and
right.
That's a really bad person to live with.
Absolutely. And we're not talking about someone who laughs at sin. Say that I know drinking is a debated issue, but we believe the Bible speaks against drinking. If you were to find out that maybe he likes to take a drink every once in a while and he's just laughing, oh, babe, it's no big deal. No big deal. We're not talking about laughing at sin issues. We're talking about he tripped in front of people. And instead of laughing at himself, he gets all mad and has to leave the party because he embarrassed himself in front of your friends.
Yeah. Or go back to the illustration I used, I think, last week. He gets a ticket.
Right.
Can he laugh at himself? It was his failure. He was the one driving too fast.
Yes.
Can he laugh at himself, or does he get all defensive? Does he get upset? Does he blame everybody?
Does he punch his car?
Yeah, laughing heartily is essential to life.
It is.
And we're always going to have a lot of opportunities to laugh. And it doesn't mean that, all of us are emotional, and sometimes in the moment we respond to things and we're like, I can't believe this is happening. But can he laugh at it later?
True.
Can he get beyond and look back at it and go, boy, that was really dumb. I can't believe I did that.
Right.
And chuckle at himself. Laughing at failures, laughing heartily will be a great asset to a relationship.
Yes. Laughing together is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So you should be able to laugh together at all kinds of different things.
Yeah. Our children learned early in our marriage that we like to laugh.
Yes.
And so if they were in trouble, they would do their best to make us laugh.
Yes.
And I would say to our children on some occasions, I'm laughing, but you're still in trouble.
Yes, you're still in serious trouble.
You are still in serious trouble, even though I'm laughing so hard I'm crying right now. But having an ability to laugh at yourself is just great.
It is.
And here's a big one, ladies. If you're trying to figure out who to marry and should I go any further in this relationship and pursue marriage, number 6 is a big one.
It is. Is he a model of genuine humility?
That's a huge one.
It is.
It's kind of a combination of the entire thing. Is he growing in his relationship to Christ? Is he a man of obvious integrity? Is he leading boldly, displaying love sacrificially, and so forth? All that could be summed up in this word, humility.
Yes.
Humility is not, it's not this weird weakness. It's not this downplaying of self. It really is a sincerity that is honest about who I am, and it's an honesty about my strengths and my weaknesses, and humility is in the midst of that honesty, an awareness of where I need to grow, where I'm improving, and it's built on everything from our relationship to God. So humility says, I know who I am. I know I'm forgiven. I know that I'm saved. I know that I'm growing. I know that God's working in my life. I know this is a weakness in my life, and I'm aware of it. That's how I am. But humility is just huge. It's sincerity. It's proper thinking about who I am and my strengths and my weaknesses. And a young man that is a model of genuine humility will be growing in all of these.
Yes.
And he'll be like, I know my strengths, and I'm really growing in that because I want God to use me. And I want to be the husband I ought to be. And I want to be the man I ought to be. And I also know my weaknesses, so I'm growing in those. Girls, you will never find a guy who is without weaknesses because they don't exist. We are in a sin-cursed world. Every guy has weaknesses. The point is, what are you doing about them? If you're growing in your weaknesses, then you're showing humility.
Yes.
So what else would you add to that, babe?
I would just say, just be careful of any type of arrogance. There are so many gentlemen that are just caught up in that swagger. And I mean, sometimes guys, young men especially, can have a little swagger to them, and it can be actually a little bit attractive, but you don't want someone who is arrogant. Because that actually will show a lot of pride, and it actually can come out in those anger issues that we talked about earlier.
You would say confidence is a good thing. Arrogance is a bad thing.
Yes. I would say that.
Yes.
Absolutely. So just be careful about the arrogance. You do want him to have some confidence in his leadership abilities, in his job, in his ministry, whatever. But you don't want that arrogance to show through.
Absolutely. Well, we're a little under time today, but I think this is a good stopping place.
It is. It's good.
And next week, we want to talk to you that are single about what do you do with your sexual desires. So that'll be a good one.
Yes. I think sometimes we have heard people say, oh, well, if you're single, you can just put all of that to sleep. It can just be resting, and it doesn't awaken at all because you have it totally under Holy Spirit control. Well, you can have it under Holy Spirit control, but I would say that singles do have sexual desires that are not completely asleep.
Absolutely. So join us next week and let's discuss that. This is Keeping It Young, and we hope this podcast series has been a real help. If you know somebody you think it'd be a help and encouragement to them, please like it, share it, let them know about it.
Yes.
And in the meantime, put into practice what you're learning, and we'll see you next week.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production.